And good morning, everyone out there in internet land and beyond. I don't know if there's a beyond anymore because I've been stuck in my house for so long, right, Pam? We don't know what's beyond.
So
But it's
true.
coming. It's
Beyond the
coming.
vaccine.
It is, definitely. So, here in Binghamton, folks, it's a sunny day. It's going to be like 50, 50, 50, 50. So this woman is going to get out with the dog today. And you know how I feel about that. That's one of the best things ever. But before all that happens, I have a guest on Smart Conversations. I'm Yvonne DeVita, and Pam Prior is here. Pam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Everyone, I want to ask you a question about showing up. I tell you all the time that you need to show up because showing up really is almost like the first step to getting your business going. But how many of us are showing up for our numbers and our finances? I can tell you that I don't show up for those and give them to my husband. And now I feel guilty because Pam was going to tell me how I can show up and feel good about it. So let me tell you about her before we get too much farther in. This woman is so fantastic. Wait till you hear what she's doing. She's the dynamic opposite of every green shade accountant you've ever imagined. She's the author of Your First CFO, The Accounting Cure for Small Business Owners. It's a bestseller that makes finance fun. Okay, I'm going to say that again because, bestseller that makes finance fun. We'll find out about that. Fun and accessible for entrepreneurs. She is also the entertaining and informative host of the Cash Flow podcast on iTunes and the founder of the novel new Profit Concierge experience for entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur herself, Pam Prior brings finance to her fellow entrepreneurs in an approachable, joyful, and engaging way, clearing the path for them to unleash their cash flow and kickstart the business engines. I really like that, Pam. Cash flow and kickstart the business engines. Wow, that's brilliant. Her magic is removing once and for all the frustration, fear, overwhelm, and tired old money stories that handicap so many of us in our businesses, delivering finance in a new way for entrepreneurs, but founded on 30 years of Fortune 50 and private equity corporate financial leadership excellence. Pam, I want to go back up to here where it says her magic. Listen, I tell everybody they have magic. Tell me about your
Absolutely.
magic.
So that is exactly my magic, because one of the things that I learned early on as I was doing this work with entrepreneurs is that I saw their whole um, attitude, feeling about energy over finances change as we work together. And I loved it. I also saw it on stages when an audience, you could just see them going, oh, geez, it's the finance talk. But then just initially into the conversation, I could see that they could start thinking about it a little bit differently. And so one of the things that my profession is cursed with is the actual thing we do is incredibly boring and dry, and most people hate it. But what I realized is there's this space between what has to happen in the boring, dry space and what an entrepreneur really needs to know about finances, and that I could bridge that with something much more entertaining. And that's my magic.
Wow. So, what do you think makes so many of us like afraid of numbers?
So I have talked to thousands of entrepreneurs about this very question, and I've dropped it into four categories. And two of them are very psychological, and two of them are very tactical, sort of practical areas. So the two psychological ones are fear is the big one, and shame. And I want to talk to you about shame for a minute, because what happens normally, like if I'm doing a Zoom call or if I'm in an audience full of people, I will say, okay, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to make you feel awful for a minute. Think about your most embarrassing money story. And I'll tell people to come up with that in their heads, and I'll wait a second so that they really do and they feel it for a minute. And then I'm going to say, look, I want you to look around this room and know that absolutely everybody in this room right now just came up with with a story, their most embarrassing money story. And that everybody in this room right now also believes theirs is probably the worst one in the room. And point out that I don't care whether you are just starting out on your entrepreneurial journey. I don't care if you are one of those 8-figure entrepreneurs that you see showing up on all over the place. Everybody's got that story. And I know that because I have clients in every one of those spaces. And I've spoken to audience in every one of those spaces. So what I tell people is that particular issue, which is a psychological one, while we're talking, let's just take that and put it on the shelf, because there's no judgment here, because you don't have the most embarrassing story. And every single person in the room has a story. We just don't talk about them. So that's kind of one I handle that way. But the second one is fear. The second psychological issue is fear. And truthfully, we don't know what we're going to see. So I often talk about, you remember that game Chutes and Ladders?
Yeah, I play
Okay.
it with my grandkids.
Bingo. So every time you roll the dice, you have no idea where you're going to land. Like it could be a safe roll. It could be a roll that juts you to the end zone right away, or it could be the one I always hit, which was that last slide at the very top, which took you all the way
All
down
the
to
way
the
to the
bottom.
beginning, right?
Bingo. So there's a little bit in the game of, I won't say fear, but like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen as you roll the dice. Well, so grow that up into an entrepreneur. Every day you have to make a decision. It's like the fear of rolling the dice, because you don't know where you're going to land. Are you
Yeah.
going to land on the next pothole and your whole
Yeah.
business is going to crush? Or are you going to land at the bottom of the next ladder and have this massive opportunity and maybe not be ready for it? So how do we overcome that fear? Fear is really the thing you have before you know what you're dealing with. Once you know what you're dealing with, once the tiger's in your face, it switches to adrenaline and action, right? So how do I get that tiger? If it is a tiger, usually it ends up being a kitty cat, but sometimes it's a
Right.
tiger. How
Mm-hmm.
do I get to the point where I'm willing to look at what that tiger is, or even the capacity to see it? And we do that with a forecast. And one of the things I'm going to offer to you or send you a link for is a very easy forecast that every entrepreneur can do, that opens up the line of sight so you don't have to fear what you can't see. You can actually switch from fear about what you're going to see to, okay, let me see what it is, and now I can act on it. So
Mm.
those are the two big psychological ones. The other two, very tactical, and they're time and overwhelm.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we don't have time to do stuff, right? We are entrepreneurs. There is on my list every day so many things I never get to. And productivity is a whole nother conversation. But one of the things that happens is we get these sheets of paper that people tell us are our numbers. And the symptoms of this time issue are, you go, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand the names that are on this report. I think my business made more than this. If my business is making this much money, why isn't there any cash in my bank account?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time to deal with this. And then we slap that thing in a drawer and go, I'll deal with that next month. And then the next month, and then the next month. And all of a sudden that drawer becomes a closet full of piled up papers, right?
Yeah.
So we just don't have the time to take it apart and try and figure it out in our own language. There are two things that make every second you spend on that piece of paper worthwhile. And I'm going to tell you what they are. They're both contexts. Okay. And
Okay.
the way that those numbers come to life and become something you're excited to spend time on is you put them in context. And the way you put them in context is over time is number one, and versus your expectations is number two. Okay. So over time, what that means is if your bookkeeper's giving you a report, or you're looking at a report that says, here's what happened last month, don't just look at last month. Have them give you one that shows the last 12 months in a row.
Mm.
Then you could start to see a story. Oh, my revenue went up here. My expenses went down. I spent more in marketing. That drove my revenue. Uh-oh, I didn't make money in that month. Maybe my clients are all in Disney World. Maybe I should go to Disney World that month. Whatever, it becomes a story. It comes to life, right? So now it's worth your time, because instead of just a piece of paper with numbers, it's telling you a story about your business and what you can do about it. And then the other thing is, once you've done this forecast, you can see how your numbers did against that forecast. And again, it starts to tell a story now, because say you thought, I'm going to sell 3 things at $4,000 each. So that's $12,000 is what you expected to get. And when you look at the end of the month, you see you sold $5,000 worth of stuff. You can all of a sudden go, oh, maybe I moved that price a little too high. I moved it to 5,000, but I only sold one. Maybe I need to try 4,500 instead of 5,000. Now it becomes something you can act on. So it's worth your time.
So Pam, 2 things.
Mm-hmm.
One, I just recently attended a webinar thing where one of the discussion was on money mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was brought up is, so the woman giving it was doing like a hot seat thing with one of the attendees. I'm going to ask you a question and you answer it from 1 to 10 because numbers don't lie. And I wrote, yes, they do. Numbers lie all the time. They are. I had an accountant once who said, I said to him, so how much am I going to get back? And he said to me, how much would you like to get back? And it was like, what does that mean? And he just smiled. So that's one. But number 2, do you help us with this besides just doing the numbers? Is what you do? Because there's a whole lot of stuff to unpack on what you just said.
Yeah, there is a ton of stuff to unpack in what I just said. So let's go to the first question. Numbers don't lie. So numbers tell a story. Okay. And you know all about books, right? What you read is interpreted differently by every reader.
Yes.
Right. So there's a very high ethical standard in accounting. And I do commend my profession for this. So for example, I'm a licensed CPA. I can never lie, cheat, steal, any of those things.
Right.
So, but I can craft how a set of numbers are interpreted or help to craft somebody else's interpretation of the numbers to tell the story that needs to be told. So, for example, the same set of numbers could be my tax numbers and something I'm going to present to a bank because I want a loan. The tax numbers, I'm just going to say, here it is. Here's my net income based on the tax laws. I've booked everything where it's supposed to be booked. Here you go. Over here, I'm going to craft the narrative around that to explain why it makes sense to lend us money. I'm going to put it in the context of a forecast. I'm going to use different words that might have a different emotional reaction from somebody. So no numbers don't lie any more than a book lies.
So that's really, for me, that's really helpful. You keep saying the word story, and that's really helpful because I'm one of those people who was not, I'm going to say I wasn't good in math, but I don't know that I wasn't good in math. I avoided it because I preferred to write stories. And then I didn't do well. And no one in my entire grade school or high school said to me, hey, Yvonne, let's get some extra study here to help you with this because you're smart, you can do it, you just aren't applying or you're not nobody did that. So I grew up thinking I was stupid when it came to
that happens so often,
right?
And that's one of the reasons I talk about shame. That is sometimes people's shame is like, I'm no good at numbers, they say. And a lot of times it's because they didn't ever get the education, but a lot of times some people have things around dyslexia with words also happen around numbers. And that can be very frustrating for an entrepreneur. One of the other things I've found almost every single time with a client is even though they might hate math or they might think they hate accounting or whatever it is, they actually know what's happening in their business.
Yes.
They just talk about it differently. So most of the time what I do with a client is I just listen. How do you think about your business? And then we work to say, okay, I know all the accounting stuff. You don't need to know that. I love that. I am a geek. That's my problem, not yours. But how do I take all that stuff and craft the story that's going to speak to you? An accurate story, but what I'm going to do is twist it so that it speaks to you. A perfect example of this is I had a client whose old accountant said that they had a buffer zone in their P&L. And that's how we talked about it. You have a buffer zone in your P&L. And I came to learn that really all she wanted was to know, I want every quarter to have a pool of money that I can spend on an experiment. And I want to know how much it is. And I just think of it as I forget what she called it, but like, let's just call it my playground. So that's easy. We just changed the line item on the P&L, which is, by the way, your profit and loss statement, which
Mhm.
nobody had translated, and we call it playground. And all of a sudden, that report becomes meaningful because now she can look at it and say, I thought I was going to spend 90,000 on my playground. I spent 60, so I got an extra 30 I can move over. That's what we do to
Mm.
get the information to
That's
people.
really magic. I really
That's what
love
I've discovered is my magic. And that's the part I
Yeah.
love the most, which is even funkier.
Yeah. Well, but you really have brought together and kind of wedded the whole story idea with the numbers idea. And you know, I could never even remotely advise a client on numbers, but I
Mhm.
do advise them to be aware of their numbers. But when I'm talking to them about a story and their message, and you know, it's an emotional thing, and numbers
Bingo.
are too.
Yes, that is so, so, so right. And we want the numbers to drive that emotion, the
Yeah.
positive pieces of it, and minimize the negative pieces. Because your other question was, how do we deal with people who have mindset issues around money? And
Yeah.
thing I did point out, everybody's got a story. So there is not a client I've had where I haven't worked with them to deal with that story. And I have discovered, much to my own surprise, I'm really good at that. And probably because I've got my own money
Mhm.
issues. I'm working through them. You're never through anything, right?
Right, right, right.
But that becomes part of the package. Yes. In order for an entrepreneur to really engage the way they need to, the way that I talk to them about engaging in this,
Hmm.
is they have to be allowed to connect to the story and the emotion in a safe place. And I'm able to provide that safe place. It's been called everything from kind of friend in the foxhole to fairy godmother, however my clients interpret it. Here's a safe space where we're going to hold this emotional issue together.
Yeah, so the book, Your First CFO, is that me? Am I my first CFO?
It does allow you to be your first CFO. Yes, that's the point of the book. It's here are some things that are a little different than what you might think. It does not teach you how to do bookkeeping.
So no. So I see a pencil, and this
Hmm.
leads me to think, well, okay, just the same way that we craft stories and erase and revise and change the, you know, the wording or the paragraph, you're showing we can change the numbers
Yes,
because the numbers
absolutely.
change.
It is. But when you get in here and read it, this is titled this way because it's what people think they need. When they
Uh-huh.
get in here and read it, what they realize is you're not ever going to actually create a spreadsheet in this. You're not ever going to get a piece of pencil and write down numbers. You're going
Interesting.
to actually draw your business. You're going to write some narrative about your business. You're going to draw your business. Then you're going to understand the things you need to know and watch and how you get them, how you ask for them. And that's really what we're driving here, is not to teach you how to be a bookkeeper, but to teach you how to be a CEO.
I'm getting this book.
Owns your
I'm getting
business,
this book.
everything. Yeah, and what we say, I mean, this is where it ties into showing up, right? So for anything, any goal you've succeeded at in any period of time, if you think of one, you
Mhm.
showed up for the hard stuff,
Yeah.
right? In my case, if I had to pick between a health bar and a candy bar,
Mhm.
if I succeeded in my weight loss, I picked the health bar, even in that
Yeah.
hard moment.
Mhm.
So this is sort of the same thing. If you think of the business as like three major components,
Right.
we have the part we're really good at, our superpower. This is
Yeah. Yeah.
operations. This is how we do what we do. You can
Mhm.
put me in a spreadsheet and I'm there all day. You can put me with a client working on mindset. I can be there all day. Then there's the marketing piece, which I'm not as comfortable with, but it's fun. It's new stuff.
Mhm.
It's kind of
Mhm.
sexy, right? Then there's this other third, which is the finance piece that we tend to not show up for all those reasons we talked about.
Mhm.
It can all be overcome. So my point is, let's show up for that last third, put that whole circle together. Then
Wow.
you're not a 67% CEO, you're 100% CEO, getting 100% of the results. We just have to show that that third is pain-free.
Well, you're almost convincing me. I got to get your book, but you know, here's the crutch. Here's the crutch.
I'm ready.
As you said, I know what's going on in my business. So I for the most part, I am the major salesperson. I bring in the clients. I know what those clients are paying, but I immediately sign the client and turn the contract and the money over to my husband and say, okay, you let me know when the money comes through. You let me know this, you let me know that. And should I not be doing that?
No, you should be doing that. That is
Okay.
exactly what you should be doing.
Oh,
And
good.
here's what you may do in addition to that,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because we don't want entrepreneurs being bookkeepers and contract writers and negotiators, right? So you're absolutely right to sign the deal, turn that over to somebody who likes it better and is maybe enjoys it. It really brings them what they need. But now add on to that, asking for the things you need back from that information. And knowing what
Ah,
things you need back from that information. And the kind of things, just as an example, you need back from that information is, how much money do I have to spend on growing the business?
uh-huh.
How long do I have, if I never made money for the next 3 months, do I have enough cash to cover that emergency? How much can I pay myself? What should my budget be for technology? Those are the questions entrepreneurs have that the
Mm,
bookkeeper or your finance people should be bringing back to you in whatever form you like it: pictures, narrative,
mhm.
writing, email, box, whatever you like, so that you can know month to month or be confident in, oh, this is how many sales I need to get. And then I'm going to be able to spend this on such and such a thing and pay myself this, or it's going to take me 12 months to become profitable because I'm just starting out of the gate.
Mhm.
So how am I going to deal with that? I'm going to need this much credit, or I'm going to need to invest this much of my own money. The questions that matter to you is what that person should be taking all that information and spitting back to you.
So that's really helpful. And it makes me understand even better. When I first started many years ago, one of my mentors really drilled into our heads. We were a CEO group, and the fact that hope is not a plan, folks. So I really yell at people when they say, well, I hope to do this or I hope to do that. I'm like, don't hope, plan. So you need that plan. And it
Mhm.
sounds to me from what you're describing that it would be so much more effective and kind of easier on the entrepreneur if they were to build the story the way you're describing, because that's their plan.
The plan is the story. The story
Yeah.
is the plan. And then that can then be translated into numbers that make sense to you relative to the story.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, that's really hitting home. And I have never looked at it that way, never used the word story in connection with numbers because they were so far apart for me. And you have brought them together, and it's now sounding like, wow, maybe I can sit down and look at our plan a little bit more cohesively.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. That would be the best use of a half hour I've had this week right now.
And I want others too. I sometimes meet um, entrepreneurs just getting started who, much the same as I was, I remember the old days, they're so frustrated and a little bit depressed because they have this great idea and they're building this business. They had a few people who were interested, but now it's not growing. So they can't do the things they want and they don't know how to proceed. And it's like,
Hard.
it's very hard, isn't it? But one of the things that helped me way back when I launched my publishing business was I hired someone to do a business plan. I could have gone on the internet.
Mhm.
I mean, it was so long ago that nobody used the internet that much, but we did. Um, and I could have, but I knew that there was a woman in my networking group who did business plans. She helped us create a business plan that we took to the bank and we got a loan.
That does
See?
happen. They will lend on a plan that is solid. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. And so I remember being astonished, just astonished. I'm like, I really enjoyed it. It was a good process and all. I don't remember the number part. I'm sure she talked numbers, but I was more in the development of the
Mm-hmm.
storyline and stuff. And I remember taking it to the bank and just figuring, I wasn't planning them. They gave me $100,000. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it was her. And the person who drove it was the accountant that we worked with.
And it sounds like they knew exactly what a good business plan is.
Yeah.
It tells the story
Yeah.
with the numbers supporting the story.
Well, they also, like you said earlier, they knew what the bank wanted. So
Right.
they put it in the terms the bank needed to hear.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I never associated it that way. It's almost like we are understanding these days that everything we do is a story, and that the story is the emotional part of both our life and our business, and they're kind of intertwined.
Right.
But we're coming to the end of our time here, and I really, man, this was really fantastic. And I hope I'm going to put this in front of a few people in the back of my mind that I've been talking to who really need to hear this, because the story you just told is a pathway to success.
I think it is for any entrepreneur wherever they are, and you're never too far down any road to really get a hold of this and just change the whole thought process about it.
And I don't think it, I know it. So I'm so glad that we could have you on, Pam. And
I'm thrilled to be here. You're an awesome interviewer. This was so much fun.
Well, yeah, you just really made numbers. It's almost like, and I hope you'll take this as a great big compliment, but like I'm on Sesame Street and you're teaching me the numbers, and I'm like, oh, this is fun and exciting.
Finance is fun. That's my whole mantra. I'll tell you, my secret goal is to get 1,000 people on a Zoom screen all saying finance is fun because they really believe it. That is one of my visions.
You can do it. You can do it.
I'm ready.
Absolutely. I'm there. I'll bring 5 or 10 people.
Yes.
We'll get it done. Absolutely. That's the next thing. So Pam, just very quickly, where can we find you online? All of this, by the way, will be written out, so you'll have the links and the numbers and everything you need, but tell us where to find you. And you mentioned something that we were going to offer people.
Yeah. So 3 things I'm going to tell you. One is I am on LinkedIn. I'm not as active there, but you can find me on LinkedIn. The second is I have a Facebook group called Profit Concierge for Entrepreneurs. Join us in there. We talk about this stuff. It's a really tight community of people. We share each other's businesses in there as well, so that we can continue to help support each other. And you get some fun finance tips mixed in there. I kind of, I work it in the cracks so that we continue to have some good information in there. And then the last thing, you're going to put a link in the notes here. But one of the things I talked about was that very simple forecast that you can do that removes or helps remove that fear. And there's a video explaining how to do it. So it is a spreadsheet, but it's a very straightforward spreadsheet. And the video walks through exactly how to work on it. And you only need one thing with the spreadsheet to be able to do it in 15 minutes of time a week. That's it. And if you can spend 15 minutes a week in this thing, you will find, oh, there's my staff. They love that spreadsheet.
Oh, mine is not around.
But you'll find money in your business, and you'll start to see that fear veil slip away.
I'm going to do it. And if I can do it, you guys, you can do it. But I'll do it, and I'll tell you what it's like. So thank you, Pam Prior. And, maybe we'll do this again, not too far down the road. I mean, maybe I have lots of other things I want to ask you. So we probably will have to do this. But thank you for being on Smart Conversations.
I would love to do it again anytime. You let me know. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. Talking to you is delightful.